Namaskar, good evening. You're watching the News Hour at 9 and I'm Swati Joshi. As the world turns into a battlefield, a combat zone of sorts has also emerged at the G-7 summit. Canada, the host, has unwittingly taken the center stage amidst escalating global conflict. The war clouds cast a shadow on the summit, where the leaders of G7 nations urged a de-escalation of hostilities in the Middle East, including a ceasefire in Gaza. However, they stopped short of calling for a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. The joint statement was signed by US President Donald Trump, who then left the meeting early. His intentions, however, are still unclear. In typical Trump fashion, US President made cryptic comments about big stuff on the horizon before his hasty exit. The abrupt return to Washington sparked intense speculation about a possible ceasefire. However, Trump added further to intrigue by saying that he wasn't looking at a ceasefire, but the real end. Watch before we try to decode the mystery of Trump's musings.
I have to be back as soon as I can. We're going to have dinner with these wonderful leaders, and then I get on the plane and I have to be back early. We're not looking for a ceasefire. I didn't say I was looking for a ceasefire. That was Emmanuel, nice guy, but he doesn't get it right too often. But we're not looking. We're looking for better than a ceasefire. An end, a real end, not a ceasefire, an end.
So what has also set the tongues wagging is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's suggestion that assassinating Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei would bring an end to the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran, rather than escalate it. This was also bolstered by Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz, warning Khamenei of a fate similar to Saddam Hussein during an assessment this morning with IDF's top brass, with rumors now swirling about possible US involvement in Israel's actions, even though officials firmly deny any such plans. Those trying to read between the lines are asking, is this the bigger goal that Trump is hinting at? Is regime change the actual end game in this conflict, the real end that US President speaks of? As all signs point towards further worsening of crisis, India has started evacuating its students to safety via land border to Armenia. Over 600 students have been relocated so far. As global attention now shifts to Alberta, the host of G7 summit, Prime Minister Modi is there on his first visit to Canada since the diplomatic ties between the two countries deteriorated following the killing of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in 2023. In just 2 hours from now, the bilaterals will start. The first one being between India and Canada. And that, in fact, brings us to the legitimate question that we are asking. The legitimate question being, what should the world expect next? Bigger, better, or worse? What lies ahead? Are things going to get better or worse? Let's take that question across to our guests.
You're watching the News Hour at 9. Debate number 1 on Times Now. Super Prime Time.
And joining us tonight on the broadcast are Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Senior Fellow, IPCS, Ambassador Yash Sinha, former diplomat. We have Tara Kartha, former Director, National Security Council, Pastor Mac Burns, Spiritual Advisor to President Donald Trump and founder of the Now Television Network. We also have Sudhindra Kulkarni, columnist. Thank you very much for joining us. I want to first go across to Pastor Burns. Pastor Burns, can you help us decode what Donald Trump actually meant when he said that, not ceasefire, but something bigger? And when he spoke about the real end, what is this thing which is bigger than ceasefire, and what does he mean when he says real end?
Well, first of all, let me just say this. President Trump has stated over many, many years, at least over 15 times, documented or recorded 15 times that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, number one. All the way back in 2011, he's documented and stating this. And the fact that he left G7, well, G7 has proven to not be a friend or treating the United States fairly in regards to trade. The President Trump has always campaigned and believed that the America First agenda means that we are going to get our fair and shared deal of marketing and economics. Now, regarding why he said not a ceasefire, but for a permanent end, well, that's just that. Ceasefires look good for the headlines, but in the end, they are just Band-Aid. President Trump is not looking for a Band-Aid solution. He's looking for a real solution, a real true peace. Real true end to the conflict. No more of these dragging the United States in these foreign wars and these conflicts where there's no actual end. And that's what the America First agenda means, to make sure that if, again, the president made it clear when Israel attacked Iran, that the president said we had nothing to do with it. We warned Iran for 60 days. This was day 61. So you knew in advance that Israel was going to bomb, but we wanted to still come to the table with Iran. And that's just President Trump's desire, I believe, to make our enemies our friends. That's why he met with Jim Jong-un 3 different times to try to bring peace. But again, Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, according to President Trump. And the real end is not a Band-Aid ceasefire, but bringing real peace and stability in that situation.
You know, when you say real end is to bring stability and peace, and I have to bring this up because according to Benjamin Netanyahu, the real end to the conflict would be assassination of Khamenei. He says that is not going to escalate the situation, but that is in fact going to end the conflict. What are your views on that? I
agree. Absolutely agree to that. Violence is not the answer. I do not agree with Benjamin, the Prime Minister's assessment of assassinating the supreme leader. Again, I think that it can be done in diplomacy. Dr. Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, all great leaders led nonviolent approaches. And as a man of God, I stand behind those same approaches, nonviolence, when it can be avoided. Assassinating a leader will just escalate it even more. You think killing one leader will cause Iran just to back down? Absolutely not. No, they will put everything in their power and might to destroy Israel. And that's not what we want. That's not what President Trump wants. We want peace. But again, Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, but we still want peace. I mean, that's why President Trump, and a question was asked to me in India media before as to why President Trump not calling out Pakistan, but calling out India. Well, that's because Pakistan is not calling for the death of America or death of American leaders.
But Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu says that he's fighting your war. He's saying we are doing this for you because it's Israel today. It's going to be America next.
No, I don't think that's the case at all. I think that peace and diplomacy is what President Trump is looking for, to simply attack Iran. I believe, again, there was a time where Iran was friends of the United States of America. And I pray that all wars, especially with North Korea and South Korea, all wars with China, all wars with Russia, all wars with Iran, that they be ceased and that we can come to the table in a peaceful and prosperity manner where all people will prosper. Because at the end of the day, these governments go head and head, but who really suffers? It is the people. Okay. The Iranian people being bombed. The Israeli people being bombed. People are dying. So for me, I'm like President Trump. No ceasefire. Let's get to the real root of the problem, and let's make sure that we have peace in the Middle East.
Yes, but what's the solution to that? We don't know that. Suspense is only building on that particular issue. I want to bring in Abhijit Iyer Mitra because that's not the only thing Donald Trump said, isn't it? He said evacuate Tehran immediately. He also said what a shame and waste of human life. I told Iran to take that deal. So is he hinting at something far worse?
You know, now that Swati, now that the Israelis have gone in, it's a sort of do or die situation on the Israeli-American side, and it's a use it or lose it conundrum on the Iranian side. You know, the Iranians, given the kind of losses they've suffered, I can tell you, I expected the Iranian response to be a lot more stout, prolonged and bitter than what we've seen. You know, the first day they fired 200 missiles, the second day it was 150. Now they're firing, last night they fired 15 missiles, tonight they fired 10 missiles. Their capacity is eroding drastically and their need for the nuclear bomb just went up. On the other hand, the Israelis have no option now that they've gone in other than to finish the job, because if they don't, if they leave any fissile material with Iran, we know almost to a certainty it is going to be weaponized. Now, this then creates a whole load of other problems for Israel, because just bombing those facilities and leaving the fissile material buried underground is not a feasible solution. The Iranians might just go in, dig, get it out, and weaponize that material. So there is actually, what you're seeing is that the longer this conflict continues, the stakes keep going up. You might actually need a temporary ground occupation of, say, Fordow and Natanz, the main reactors, along with a few ancillary facilities like Bushehr, where the fissile material is actually extracted. Which would be, at least a month-long process, if nothing else. It can't be done without American help, because the extractors you need would be very heavy. People don't realize that, uranium and plutonium are much heavier than iron. So, even if you're talking about a few hundred kilos, it's super heavy stuff that needs to be extracted, flown out, and things like that. What the Iranians are offering right now is flexibility in talks as a sweetener for stopping the bombing. The window for flexibility left, that was the 60 days that President Trump had given them. They acted too smart by half, and now, they're paying the price for it.
Well, that's what Israel said, that they're trying to buy time, but they will lie and they'll try to bounce back. I want to bring in Ms. Kartha. Ms. Kartha, when Donald Trump says that, something bigger than ceasefire, that is the reason why for his early departure, what is your assessment? Does this hint anywhere about America's involvement now directly, although the officials keep denying that? And does it also hint at perhaps regime change? Do you see it that way?
Well, in a way, they're already involved, right? I mean, they are defending Israel with their missiles. It's not that they're not there. Assassinating him sounds like, I think the other gentleman said, you assassinate Khamenei, you're asking for trouble. Where earlier there was in fact, a lot of disillusionment. People were fed up with sanctions. There was a lot of opposition against the regime. Assassinating him will actually reverse that process. Regime change, possible. I mean, if I would put I put most of my coins on that, because that it could be the likeliest outcome of this if indeed the US has prepared the ground for that, which, to be honest, at the moment I don't see any kind of thing. What shall I say? The black swan aspect in this is that Iran is getting a lot of Chinese help. So this is not a walkover, and this is not something which has happened yesterday or today. They've been at it for years. I mean, much of the same missiles which Pakistan gets, they change the name around and it goes to Iran. And where you earlier had, you had, like you said, 2 cargo aircraft which came in possibly with weapons for them. Apart from that, there is now a rail link from China to Iran. So this has now become a proper Cold War proxy site. That is my fear. So if President Trump says that, things are going to work out, well, I hope it does. Like I said, we all want the wars to end. But it's not going to be that easy with this Cold War, the stuff around it, with the fact that the Chinese are definitely 100% helping Iran.
I want to quickly go back to Pastor Burns. Chinese involvement, does that worry you? Is that the reason that, we will soon see a lot of huddles and high-level back-to-back talks?
Well, I mean, it's clear that China is not a friend to America. It is clear that China has tried to undermine the economy and the might of the United States and the U.S. almighty dollar. They've been doing this for years, doing it in Africa, in the DRC, in other parts of the world. Clearly undermining any attempt to bring peace and stability back by the United States of America. So I agree with my colleague's assessment regarding Chinese involvement. It is clear the end of the solution is simple this. The real solution, this is what President Trump wants. He wants the fact that, remember, he backed away from the Iranian nuclear deal because Iran would have received billions of dollars from the United States of America while just pausing their nuclear efforts. And the president is not standing for that. He doesn't want a pause to their nuclear development. He wants an end of it, and that's why he walked away from the deal. And so this is all about Iran trying to amass nuclear weapons to be a danger, not just to the United States of America, not just to Israel, but other nations in that region that aims to bring stability. And China is most definitely behind it. China is most definitely supporting the efforts to undermine. And she is absolutely right. This is most definitely a proxy war between two great nations. And it's very sad because, as President Trump said, Iran should have taken the deal. More innocent lives are now going to die because Iran refuses to take that deal.
Right. But, like I said, the answer of the question as to how we are going to attain that peace and stability that Donald Trump is talking about or wants.
Well, negotiations.
Through negotiations. Okay.
We got to get back to the negotiating table. We got to get back to stronger negotiations. We got to get back to sitting at the table and having realistic goals that's going to be beneficial for all nations. In the end, Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. This is not Obama's administration. This is not Biden's administration.
Okay.
This is the Trump administration. Iran cannot have nuclear weapons.
That has been underlined.
We want to have peace. We want peace. And we want peace with Iran too, and Israel.
Okay, let me bring in Ambassador Yash Sinha as well. Do you see the negotiations happening in a fresh manner, Ambassador Yash Sinha? Also, involvement of China that certainly is not for peace and stability, one would say, that they're looking to escalate the matter. Then how do you counter that?
I think to answer your first question when you began this program is that things will get worse before they get better. And I'm talking about the conflict that's ongoing right now. As far as negotiations, obviously, they're the preferred option. I, for one, do not subscribe to the view that assassinating the Supreme Leader, and by the way, I have met the Supreme Leader some years ago, when I visited the Prime Minister and the External Affairs Minister to Tehran. I think that is not the solution. The solution is a peaceful negotiation. Now, Iran will be forced to come on the table when they get decimated militarily, and particularly if the United States joins the conflict directly. So I think it would be in Iran's interest and the region's interest if there is a negotiated settlement. I think the US can play an important role and has, in fact, offered, and there was the talk about the 60-day window. I think Iran should have seized that opportunity. However, lives are being lost, and it's not just on one side. There are attacks on Israel also, where civilians and others are being killed and injured. So I think the best solution is that the war as such stops, and there are negotiations that leads to a final solution, when Iran gives up any plans or gives up the idea of having nuclear weapons, but is able to enjoy peaceful uses of nuclear energy under IAEA safeguards. In fact, I think that the IAEA report just before Iran launched the attack on, Israel launched the attack on Iran was quite damning. And it's the first such report calling out Iran after decades. So I think it's important that a negotiated settlement is the first choice and first preference of all parties.
Okay, all right. Since we're talking about negotiation, we're talking about resetting and rebuilding. The other big highlight of the G7 summit, apart from, of course, the early departure of Donald Trump and the statement that is given that builds a lot of suspense around what next, the other big development and highlight is the India-Canada bilateral talks. And I want to now introduce Dean Baxendale, international publisher and columnist at the Sunday Guardian, also on the broadcast. Thank you very much for joining us. But I first want to go across to Sudhindra Kulkarni. Sudhindra Kulkarni, ever since the regime change in Canada, what we witnessed are a couple of decisions taken by the Canadian government that hints towards how they want a fresh start to India-Canada relationship. The crackdown on the drug terror network with links to Khalistani supporters. And according to reports, according to sources, the money from this drug trade was used to fund anti-India activities. While we know how Justin Trudeau leveled allegations against India, could not prove it with evidence that led to a downfall in the relationships between both India and Canada. So while the Prime Minister goes to the summit, the opposition here, don't you think the opposition has behaved in an irresponsible manner from, first talking about how the Prime Minister has been ignored, how India has been ignored, no invite given to him, to now saying what is he actually going to achieve there?
Swati, this is really a sideshow. I don't want to get into a debate on the photo opportunity for Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Khalistan issue. It's a side issue. Not a single Indian would support what the Khalistanis are doing in Canada. The real issue to be discussed is what you are discussing from the beginning of this debate, and that is the absolute disregard for morality and international law that we are seeing in the Israeli war against Iran. Here is a Prime Minister of a nation who is openly saying that the supreme leader of another nation, Iran, should be killed. Is this moral? Is it even legal in terms of international law? And India is silent, and the entire international community is silent. The G7 nations are silent. And we have an Israeli leader who threatens that look at the fate Saddam suffered. How was Saddam killed, and why was Saddam killed? By starting a lie that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, nuclear weapons, which turned out to be a lie ultimately. But in the process, lakhs of people were killed by American invasion. And most probably the same is being done right now. If you see Trump's statement, he says the entire Tehran should be evacuated. Is this not a terrorist threat? And India is silent, G7 nations are silent. Is there a single statement by Trump against Israel, which is an aggressor in this case? How did this war start? It started because of Israel's attack on Iran. If you see the G7 statement, it says Israel has the right to self-defense. Doesn't Iran have a right to self-defense? So we have a so-called G7 platform which is irrelevant, which is hypocritical, which is also fractured, because the leader of the United States of India just walks away. So my question is that we have to call for India as the largest democracy, the most populous nation, a nation that has always stood for world peace, must immediately call for an end to this war.
Okay.
India must also immediately call for ceasefire in Gaza. It's most unfortunate that India abstained from the vote in the United Nations General Assembly just last week, when 149 countries of the global south voted in favor of immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, and India abstained. And when this war has begun, India has not criticized the aggressor.
So,
I'm a proud Indian, a patriotic Indian, but I'm deeply pained that my country has not stood for peace, has not stood for international law, has not stood for morality.
Okay, I want to bring in our other guests as well. Dean Baxendale, your views, because Sudhindra Kulkarni says that the G7 nations have not behaved responsibly. They should have criticized Israel. Although the statement does say that Israel has a right to self-defense, it also calls for de-escalation. And one thing being made clear by everybody, that Iran cannot have a nuclear program.
But there is no criticism of Israel.
It's the aggressor, says Sudhindra Kulkarni, and Israel should have been criticized.
Yes, well, first of all, I think your last guest is living in a delusion. This is a all-out proxy war, obviously, with respect to Iran, has been in the Middle East, backed by China for decades. He talks about Iran having a potential nuclear weapon. I think that India has gone through its own machinations with respect to Pakistan having the same nuclear weapon, and look what kind of tensions that has created between the two nations. The reality is that the destabilization of the Middle East by Iran as a proxy for China and others has done nothing but to destabilize the whole Middle East. The condemnation or lack thereof, is with respect to the leaders at the G7, speaks to the fact that they're all acutely aware of the dangers that Iran has posed to stability and peace in the Middle East. So, but let's get back to the summit and the original question at hand, which really was whether or not Narendra Modi's appearance at the G7 is a positive development, and absolutely it is. India is the 5th largest economy in the world. They should be part of the G7, part of the group. We should be looking at how we can create peace and stability through economic cooperation writ large, and combat our bigger enemies, which are the Chinese Communist Party. And India full well knows how that has rolled out over the last few years. So I think we have an opportunity here to work towards economic stability and peace through a process at the G7. But also, on the other hand, I think the fact that Donald Trump has destabilized the alliance to a certain extent by the massive tariffs has also created a problem. But those tariffs were also focused on China. He's made his point. Now the United States needs to come to the table, not to negotiate as a bully, but to negotiate as fair and equal partners.
Okay. I would like both Mr. Kulkarni and Pastor Burns to respond to that. But first to Mr. Kulkarni, why are you sidestepping the question on Canada-India relations?
No, not at all. I am not sidestepping the question of Canada-India relations. We must have the best of relations between India and Canada, and every support, direct or indirect, that certain forces in Canada give to the Khalistani forces must be opposed stoutly. And it's a good thing that the current Prime Minister has realized that any support to Khalistan would cost friendship with India. On this question, there should be no ambiguity at all. But I am raising some basic questions about the Iran-Israel war, Israel's war on Iran. Why is nobody asking the question about Israel's possession of nuclear weapons? Why is Israel having nuclear weapons?
Okay, I think Abhijit
when we are demanding,
wants to come in.
and of course it's a right demand that Iran should not have nuclear weapons. But why is no one questioning Israel's possession of nuclear weapons?
So you do agree that Iran should not have nuclear...
Isn't this hypocritical?
Okay. Let Abhijit Iyer Mitra come in. Go ahead.
No, but Iran, my dear friend, Iran itself is saying that we don't want to have a nuclear weapon.
And then has been quietly working on it. And has been quietly working on it for decades. Abhijit Iyer Mitra.
The non-proliferation treaty. Israel has not signed the non-proliferation treaty.
Wants to come in.
Israel has a nuclear weapon, but no one is demanding.
Okay, Mr. Mitra wants to come in. Mr. Kulkarni, 1 second, please.
My dear friend, tell me how it is delusional.
Abhijit, can you unmute yourself? We're not able to hear you.
Israel have a nuclear weapon or not?
So, Swati,
Yes.
I can't talk if he's going to keep
Go ahead.
Okay. So, first, Israel hasn't signed the NPT. They're one of the 3 non-signatories to the NPT along with India and Pakistan. And therefore, they have an absolute right to a nuclear weapon. You can't just foist a legal commitment down their throat when they haven't signed on to the legal commitment. It's like saying I have to pay a divorce settlement when there is no marriage agreement or registration of the marriage. What kind of an argument is this? So Israel has an absolute right to nuclear weapons because they never signed the NPT. Iran, on the other hand, has signed the NPT. They've enriched their uranium to 60%. There is a whole trove, an archive that is stolen that is up on the internet minus the designs, which shows you that Iran time and again went on trying to make nuclear weapons coyly on the side. They may say anything. You know, you can say you want peace and brotherhood. Read some of Hitler's statements before he attacked Russia. He used to keep saying, I want peace and brotherhood and whatnot. And then he still launched Operation Barbarossa. So, you know, 60% enrichment. Before the attack, 24 hours before the attack, the IAEA has actually put out a very, very damning report about new illicit activities which they had not detected before. So, you know, this is a clear-cut case. Iran can say what it wants, but a country that does not want nuclear weapons does not go to 60% enrichment.
Okay, I think Ambassador Yash Sinha wants to come in.
Thank you, Swati. I wanted to address this issue. I mean, what we really haven't addressed the issue, the Palestinian issue. That is the root cause of a lot of problems in the Middle East. Now, I have studied Arabic at the American University in Cairo. One of my best teachers was a Palestinian lady. So I have been weaned on this Palestinian issue. However, we know who our friends are. While we stand for a two-state solution, we always have consistently, but Israel has been, and this recent, somebody mentioned India, Pakistan, the exchange that we had recently with Pakistan. Who stood up for us? Israel. Israel supplied us unequivocal support.
Yes.
Then why should we be going around condemning our friend and partner who is helping us? Iran is also a friend. We have a lot of projects. I myself have visited Iran 7 times when I was in charge of the division more than a decade ago. But and we have very good. I've been to Chabahar port where there's a very good sort of investment that India has, and we would like the Americans to again give that waiver so that we build that port so that we get connectivity to Central Asia. However, on the nuclear issue, we are quite clear, and we have said it not now, we have said it even during the previous government's time, that we do not want another nuclear power in the region. So let's be very clear. We can be idealistic, we can be sentimental, we can talk about things, but we must be realistic. Real politics demands that we look after our own interests, our national interests.
Absolutely.
And as far as peace and restraint is concerned, our foreign minister has spoken to his counterparts, both in Iran and in Israel. It's important that we don't do megaphone diplomacy, but work quietly behind the scenes. And as I said earlier, I do hope there will be a peaceful solution.
And I think the Prime Minister also, you know, the Prime Minister has also made it loud and clear through his message when he says this is not the era of war, neither is it the era of terrorism. I want to quickly go back to Pastor Burns. Your comment on what Dean Baxendale said, that if US wants peace and stability, it will have to come to the negotiating table with that intention, not as a bully. How do you respond to that?
Well, you know, let me just respond in regards to the assassination, the calls for assassination for the Supreme Leader. Again, I stated earlier, but let me just look at, we're trying to dive in how come other nations aren't calling it out. And also, you know, what President Trump's intention is. Well, number one, the president has made it very clear in the past that Israel has a right to defend itself by any means necessary, and that they have a right to attack immediate threats. Now, is President Trump calling for regime change? I can't speak for the president, but I can only look at his actions and what his policies are. Remember when the president had Qasem Soleimani, the leader of the Kurd Iranian forces, assassinated and killed. He could have killed the supreme leader. He could have assassinated the supreme leader, but he wasn't trying to change a regime change. He was only attacking an immediate threat to the United States of America. And he and his plans were just that, an immediate threat to the United States of America. So I think that the president's desire is, not to be calling for the assassination or regime change, but again, Israel has a right to defend itself. And if they deem that the supreme leader is an immediate threat, then that's their choice. But I do not stand behind that, nor do I believe that President Trump would either. Again, he had a chance to do that many times, but chosen not to, only focusing on those that are immediate threats to the United States of America.
Yes, given that it's Donald Trump and he said this in typical Donald Trump fashion, I guess we'll have to wait to see what the next development is, or is this just for headlines? I want to go across to Ms. Karta very quickly, shifting our focus back to the other big development that I'm talking about, the India-Canada bilateral. What is expected of this?
I think it's basically getting past the earlier problems which we had, ring fencing, the whole Niger thing, because that is still there. Don't forget, that case continues. So you have to ring fence your relationship against those things which they will try, and a lot of people they will try to put in front. I think there's talk of getting a transnational group joint working group on transnational terrorism, on transnational organized crime and things. That group might come together. But finally, it is about increasing your trade. Your trade levels, by the way, Canadian pension funds in India, I think, have trebled despite Trudeau. So that trajectory is going on. I just raised my finger because I just wanted to say, if you will permit me, one thing what Pastor Burns said was that, that there is no Pakistan hand in this. Iran's whole nuclear program came from Pakistan. So let's not forget that. And let's not forget either that Pakistan has said that we are steadfast behind Iran.
Yes.
Number 3, China is backing Iran. If China is backing Iran, I wouldn't put it past Pakistan to give a helping hand. I'll just stop there. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. That access pretty much exists. I mean, at the moment, perhaps Donald Trump or America don't want to talk about it, but they know very well about its existence. Thank you very much, Ms. Karta and gentlemen, for joining us on the broadcast with your views. Let's also take a look at the results of the question that we asked. This is the poll survey we did. Iran versus Israel. Do you think Donald Trump's intervention is only going to worsen the crisis? 75% people have voted yes, 13% people have voted no, while 12% at the moment don't want to comment. Can't say is their choice. Let's move on now to debate number 2.